Yeah, I would like to welcome each and every one of us to today's broadcast. In today's broadcast, my focus and attention will be on leadership. Our leadership position is beautiful, is lovely. Where every individual, regardless of the continent, aspired to become a leader. We see how political leaders strive to be appointed into leadership position. So also not in any way different from the way uh, I've taken after the pattern of the secular to appoint leaders. And so, therefore, I would like to share with us, my viewers all over the world, this morning, for as many aspiring the position of nation, assemblies, ministries, churches, regardless of even probably it could be in companies, organizations, multinational companies, also be into leadership position. I have to say, my admonition to everyone aspiring leadership position is centered on the life of no other by divine sovereignty. Prophet Samuel said his prophet of humility and right motivation. As a leader, was based, he was guided by the Spirit of God. Most especially when Samuel became his counselor, in facing between him and God. He started well, like average leaders will want to. He started well. And that is where I'm actually going in this course of this message. That's where I'm actually going. So that those of you outside there aspiring for leadership position is good. But one thing that must govern that is that you must not lose focus of the very reason why the Lord brought you into power. When you lose focus of the very reason why the Lord brought you into power, their sense of judgment and dead. And they lost focus of the very reason why the Lord brought them into leadership position. For every individual out there, I want you to know that God specifically have a reason for bringing you into those positions. For God to bring you into leadership position, you also have a sole responsibility to ensure that you are not distracted because of the very reason why the Lord brought you into position. Automatically, I want you to know that the Lord will not hesitate to get you out of the system. Or even if it does not remove you immediately, but you will see as we go, when you begin to see some of the traits that we're about to discuss today in your life, it is a sign that you should know that something is wrong with you as a person. And you need to trace that. The Lord will not hesitate to get you out of the system. Because a lot of individuals, a lot of leaders, for instance, churches, they started very humble, like in the case of Saul. But a lot of time they begin to interact and interface with some individuals in the course of their line of duty. You discover that what they seems not to have been doing before, they now begin to do it. They get distracted. They were once very humble, but when one and probably were humble because there was no money. That some individual, as soon to see elements of pride, they'll begin to puffed up and they begin to become so egocentric and of praises in them. And that's why, beloved, sometimes I wonder. Sometimes I wonder. But on the contrary, some individual, when they get there, they begin to bring out some certain traits, hidden traits in them that a lot of individuals out there never knew about them. They now begin to bring out some traits that people never knew were part of such individual. And you know, see them, they now begin to look down on people, they talk down on people, they show no respect for people older than them by virtue of the fact that they are now a leader, appointed a leader. And sometimes they will now walk. And therefore, beloved, when this man started so humble, and then along the line, the following things begin to happen. He began to shift in focus. It's supposed to be to God and the people he was leading. Beloved, be it secular, sacred, your focus should be God, number one, and the people. That's why you're supposed to be 6 o'clock a leader. What do I mean by 6 o'clock leader? The other arrow should go point to God, while the second arrow should point down to humanity. You have to interface between God and man. Get to know the mind of God for his people. Execute the will of God for his people. Will begin to interface between your leadership position. He lost focus. His focus shifted from God to himself. That which was the first error of King Saul. Temporary leaders, both secular and sacred, is that he began to feel insecure as David became more successful. These are common traits of some leaders, that you are already drifting away from the very reason why the Lord brought you into leadership position. Because, beloved, every opportunity that we have is not right, but a privilege to develop the people of God for the Lord. In fact, every leadership position is to develop, is to replicate humanity. When you, as a leader, the moment you attain leadership position, immediately look for people and then begin to develop it. Regardless, see, beloved, if your tenure is 4 years, you don't have to wait till the end of that 4 years to now begin to tell people you don't have an individual to take over from you. If your tenure is 10 years, you don't have to wait till 10 years before you now begin to tell people you don't have an individual to take over from you. When that happens, it shows that right from day one, you have been into leadership. And the people that were institute people, the 3Ds people, when they came to David out of these individuals, they became so strong, mighty warriors. That is the essence of leadership. And he made a general out of people that were in distress, people that could not stand up to raise their head within their society, in their order to replicate all yourself in order and bring out the leadership skill potentials in every other individual. That is the essence why the put people in leadership position in the churches, in the ministry, in the organization, regardless of denominations. That is the very reason. In fact, as leaders, you are to raise up people to do the work of the ministry. How do you get them to do the work of the ministry when you will not discover, to develop and deploy? In leadership, we are to discover the potentials in people. How do you discover the potential in people? By looking around, opening your eyes, identifying the people, going around, trying to see the potential. There is no leader ever used by God without his or our own weaknesses and traits. Used by God. Was he not a murderer? He was a murderer who later became a fugitive. Was it David? Remember the experience of David, the challenges of David. Was it Saul himself? So many. Check through the pages of the scripture. There is no particular individual ever raised by God except the master himself. That was law. That's why when you look at his leadership style, you discover that it was so fantastic. And that's what we have to learn from him within a time frame, 3 years ministerial, 3.5 years. The Lord Jesus sought for Peter, James, and others. He sought for them. He went after them. He brought them to himself to learn of him. He replicated himself in them. He poured. That is leadership by excellence. However, today we see a lot of individuals when they come into leadership position, the first thing they want to do is to consolidate on their leadership status. To consolidate, and then now begin to look at the scope of their leadership, and then try to spread their tentacles, and then sometimes in the process of doing that, they will now begin to look for loyalists. See, you can look for There are so many individuals not recommended. They may not be recommended and approved by God. But sometimes a lot of individuals want people that be loyal to them, not even bother trying to find out whether they are approved by God. And I wouldn't want to go say those people, they treated them somehow. I wouldn't want to go into that. They treated, there are historical records of such. So the most important thing is, as a leader, is not to enthrone yourself stylishly by just putting somebody that you believe probably you can influence. See, sometimes you may think when you put somebody in position, you can. The most important thing is to get to know the mind of God for the right individual, and not trying to put, because the individual you are trying to put, believing the person is loyal to you, beloved, you will later discover that that individual is not there. They thought we're loyal to them. Not about you trying to become a kingmaker. And that's why I want you to be on the lookout for one of my books on leadership. I want you to be on the lookout. Just be on the lookout. When something is ready on Amazon, I'll give us I'll come on air to tell us, so that you go get copies of yours and read some of these things. So in the case of Saul, he became envious of David. He became, how do you become a leader and without expecting people to become prosperous under you? A leader, after 1 year, after 2 years, don't you see what the master did for Peter? The master, at a point in time, called Peter. He said, cast your net and look at the experience. It was a net-breaking harvest, to the point that both his own sheep and so safe and secure are the prosperity of people under your leadership. The sign of true leadership is seeing people, the not successful people that were raised during your tenure. That is the hallmark of true leadership. But some allow leadership to be identified, make miserable, and whatever, then come withdraw the fuel subsidy when the father died, and it was the tenure of this guy, and he went to the elders, and the elders said, don't do this, and his friend said, his contemporary said, the time he got there, what happened? He tormented the people, just like as the fuel subsidy was removed and other she begin to what later happened eventually. The kingdom of that guy was rejected, and the kingdom was torn. Beloved, around us, that is what true leadership is all about. When you serve 4 years or 3 years as a leader, and you cannot single-handedly point at individual that failure. So Saul became more successful. If security, that's one of the signs of some leaders. They become insecure at the manifestation and the appearance of some certain individuals around them. Beloved, can I just tell you this? In case of, you could be appointed a leader, but it will take a leader like Potiphar, to identify Joseph around them. But however, he discovered that there is an unusual hand of God upon the life of Joseph. He brought him to himself, and that he handed and he trusted everything into the hand of this man. That's traits of leadership. These are the kind of leaders that the Lord is looking for. Leaders that will not believe that everything is all around them and all about them. Position, but the key to the turning around of the assignment oftentimes not in their hand, but political party. Don't you see what happened in Lagos State, a state in one of the states in Nigeria, when a particular individual was there, like let me mention somebody, and at the point in time, you remember the man within him turned things around. It shows that this guy, as soon as he was appointed, he kicked the ball rolling. He wasted no time, begin to turn things around. But some certain individual element felt, no, this guy is becoming, and in the process, they removed him. in the process, they shot, and I think that is what the kind of individual so many leaders are looking for. Individual. Saul became insecure. Ministerial opportunity, the platform they actually supposed to create for them for leadership, and they will all just because they don't want them to be seen. They only just want them to be seen, but not to be heard. And in the process, some individual will get into a state of depression, and in the process, lose it. Some end up with heart-related diseases, and then eventually died in the process. Out of leadership position, the corridor of leadership position, just because their leaders feel insecure anytime such individuals around them. Most leaders sometimes they prefer somebody that there's somebody that will always think when you get to leadership position, you do a way to consult, to discuss, and then by cover, they don't know the measure of the grace of God. Look at Potiphar would have just said that after all, Joseph was a prisoner. He was a prisoner bought by him, by Potiphar himself. After all, I bought him with my money. What does he know? Who does he have? What pedigree does he have? Well, beloved, he may not have the degree that you think you have, but he has God, who is the master architect and the master architect of all things. And with God on his side, Joseph, can I ask you, man, have you not chased some youth, but beloved, instead in them ministry? Thank God for this change. The reason is because the leader believe that if they must get it right, they must begin to interface, bring the younger generation close and begin to show them how ministry is done. So that by the time these guys will get there, it will be easier for them. Young individual, can you, as a listener, proudly and boldly point out that you've been able to raise? Are you like that leader who had the intention of bringing the younger generation? They don't feel so comfortable with young people around them. See, they have their excesses. That's why probably maybe when you get one of my book on strategy for church growth, strategy for growing to the 21st century church, maybe when you get it, you see some of the traits of these young people, then you'll be able to know how best to relate because of the achievement of young individuals. People that will take over from you tomorrow, whether you like it or not. They are the one that will continue from wherever you will stop. You may be thinking you will take it far. Beloved, see, where a man stops is the end of his ministry. See, in the ministry, you must get to understand that the work of the ministry and leadership generally is like a relay race. Where you stop, someone else will continue from there. That's why you don't necessarily have to die in leadership position, recognizing the fact that leadership position is a relay race. Where you end yours, someone will take it from there. But in the process, ensure interface, don't block, don't feel insecure. Life is those who broke record, yes, some years back, somebody breaking your record, then you are not a leader. Must be honest with you. You are not a leader. Because leadership is dynamic. Leadership is God-centered. And if God is the founder and the architect of God, continue to raise people, he will continue to raise people after his own heart, who will be getting direct in. Must also bear in mind. Number three thing is that he became ambitious because he saw David as a threat to his. He became so in the secular, in the political parties. When they become so ambitious, what happened? Everyone along their path, they clear them off. That is why you hear stories of assassinations here and there. They clear them off. They don't mind. They clear people off as if they are sending them to go and get something from the market and then come back home, not knowing that they are terminating their life, cutting short their life completely, sending them to their hell grave. A lot of individuals can just treat people around them as if they are not human beings. They throw away human value at the expense of the political party. They chase people away because they saw those guys as a threat to their political ambition. In some leader, in some company, they chase their David away because they saw them as a threat to their leadership aspirations and agenda. In some ministries, churches, of such individuals are threats to their leadership ambition. They chased so many for his own sake. Everything he did was measured. Everything. When this guy began to miss it, everything he did was all about him. It was for his own sake. And that's why sometimes you see some individual, everything that the only thing that matters to them is about themselves, not about even the people they are leading. They don't care about the people they are leading. They don't care about the mind of God. They don't care about the welfare of the people. They don't care about infrastructural development. They don't care about training and developing the people. They don't care about raising the next set of leaders. They don't care. They don't care. So Saul, everything Saul did and measure was for his own sake. Everything he did and measure was it for his own sake. Don't you see you had recently from one of the ministers? I wouldn't want to mention his position. Don't you see what the dollar they recover from his house? A single man in an office, political office, and yet money I believe allegedly stole from the office. So many also the same thing applicable. Some individuals today, everything they do. Have you not seen some leaders? We've had stories of some leaders. I know of some leaders that as soon as they were appointed, before they were appointed, they were so spiritual as a church leader. They were so spiritual, so consecrated. But as soon as they were appointed and they begin to now fraternize with the politician, we now begin to see what what those things they rejected before, things they were not doing before, they now return back to them like dogs returning back to vomit, and they now begin to do that. And I got to a stage that they no longer have time to sit in the church. Beloved, can I just tell you this? If by virtue of your leadership position, you no longer have time. I'm talking to church leaders now. You no longer have time to sit in your church, and you are now going from other places to churches in order to minister because of money. Then you are almost like walking and treading on the path of King Saul. You're almost like taking similar step like King Saul. Because if the reason why you go from one, there are some individuals, you even should be so shocked that they will tell you, I just finished ministering in a place now, all because of money. They will minister in almost 3 different places in just one single day. Collect money here, collect money here, collect. As if life is constituted in the abundance that man has. When that begins to happen, beloved, you are gradually becoming another King Saul. Because everything he did and measure were all centered around himself. Then, not only that, and also resulted in his ignoring God's commandment. He ignored God's instruction and not also respecting the ark of God. He ignored God's commandment. He ignored divine instruction. And then another point is that the shifting of his heart and focus to himself made King Saul's sin build a monument unto himself. When you read 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 12, in the bit of when his focus drifted away from God and towards himself, he built a monument for himself. That's why. Can I just ask you as a leader, are you not building a monument for yourself, believing that at least so that by the time you are long gone, you'll be remembered forever? Can I just be honest with you? That monument you are building, see, that monument may be there today, but may likely not be there tomorrow. That's why you must be very, very careful. So many political leaders, they put so many structures in place to be remembered forever. But when other people got there, what happened? They demolished them. They demolished them. They removed those things from there. That's you must realize. You must bear in mind. Your focus must not be shifted away. See, you will only be remembered by the posterity of the people. Then not only that, his leadership orientation of selfishness, self-centeredness led him to what I call self-appraisal. Self-appraisal. He began to appraise himself. He began to appraise himself. And also appraising the magnitude of his accomplishment. He begin to concentrate. All this and these are the things I've done. Don't you see the way the politicians do their own? Sometimes they will do some small road that just ordinary individual could do, and they'll now look for paper. They look for the electronic medias, and then they'll now, and in the process, they look for media, and then they look for media. They look for media to, begin to show all those things, and then begin to amplify, begin to praise themselves. They begin to praise themselves. They begin to praise themselves. Then another thing. So when you now begin to list out some of the things you've done, and then begin to praise, you are praising yourself. You are praising yourself. You are praising yourself. His own reputation became the focus of his leadership. His reputation became his focus of leadership. When your focus, your reputation become the focus of your leadership, is a sign that you're drifting away. So his reputation became a focus of his leadership. And then not only that, he experienced a change in the purpose of life. There was a change of purpose. There was a change. He experienced a change of purpose. Not only experience a change of purpose, when you also experience a change of purpose, the reason why the Lord brought you, then that is a problem. He forgot about the origin and the purpose of which God has appointed him to become a king, as found in 1 Samuel chapter 12, verse 13 through 15. See, when you get to leadership position and along the line you are carried away, becomes a problem. Becomes a problem. And that's the reason you must always remember how you started as a leader. You must remember. You remember who Saul was before he was appointed by God. You must always remember who you were before the Lord appointed you. Not because of your certificate, not because of your social standing before being appointed. Some individual got to leadership position by favor, by favor. And now, being there, you now change the pole. You now begin to do all kinds of things to ensure certain things does not, and some certain cadres of individual does not get in the leadership position, all just because, beloved, you fail to realize that if what you are trying to do for others now were the exact thing that the Lord did for you, you wouldn't have been there. Leadership is by God's grace, not by manipulation. Therefore, you must remember the reason why the Lord brought you there, how the Lord took you. You remember? I remember one of the governors in one of the states in Nigeria. And this man, the record have it that he went to a place to read the newspaper. And in the process, he heard about the news that they are looking for candidates. And then, because he had nothing doing, he just, by chance, he just said, let me just give it a try. And eventually, because he indicated he was appointed, a man who just go to a joint to read newspaper became a governor. And when he became a governor, what happened? The man, the common traits of African leader, he did, no, he forgot how he started, who he was as at the time the Lord took him. So many leaders today, before they were appointed leader, they were living in a very cool, small cubicle. They've forgotten all that. That's true. They're down of their time. Beloved, that is a loss of focus. That's a loss of focus. So that's why, remember recently when the particular regime left and you discover that they said they went to the house of a particular ex-governor in one of the states in Nigeria, and how many they saw over 30-something vehicles, official vehicle that the man has, took to his own house. That's a loss of focus. That's a loss of focus. That's a loss of focus. When you lose purpose, why God brought you into leadership, you misbehave. And you must always remember you were nobody before the Lord took you. Luckily, some of you may probably be somebody before the Lord took you. But there are so many leaders today, where there are so many general overseers of ministries and organizations that where they were nobody before the Lord appointed them. And that alone is enough for them to be humble, to always remember who they were before the Lord took them, and not to get into their head, to misbehave before the Lord and cause them to lose focus and the reason why the Lord put them there. So many individuals, they have no pedigree, they have no certificate, they have nothing. Before the Lord appointed them into political position, they should not get there and forget who they were before being appointed by God. Then aside from the fact that then he forgot about his origin and the purpose of God. Please, I charge you, don't forget about your origin, who you were before you were appointed by God into leadership position. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that, and now begin to raise shoulder. Don't ever forget that. Then another thing was that Saul even dared to oppose God by making by fighting against David. He directly dared to oppose God. He opposed God. Then not only that, leadership um, Saul leadership as a failure of leadership was colored by story highlighted by his selfishness, self-centeredness. He waged war, he got God's command, and then also trying to seek his own will. Then aside from that, he was, aside from the fact I've mentioned the fact that it was ambition, and then this willingness to sacrifice others. There are some leaders, first Samuel chapter 14, verse 45. His willingness to sacrifice others. He was willing to sacrifice others. So many leaders are not mind, they don't mind, they're willing to sacrifice others. As long as they are in power, they don't mind sacrificing the will of people, sacrificing even people. No, they don't mind people losing their life for the sake of their ambition. Then another thing, that another hidden thing in the life of this man as a leader was the deep hatred. That was a deep hatred. See, when you as a leader, you are appointed a leader, and there is what I call deep hatred for people, for an individual, then it shows that there is a problem with you. We see this as found recorded in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 32 through 33. Deep hatred for David, and then you remember, in the course of his deep hatred for David, he lost focus of his leadership position, and instead of him to govern the people on defending and administering his leadership position on the people, he now began to pursue David. He left the palace to go to the jungle and begin to chase David. He left the major chasing the shadow. That's what distraction will cause a man. That's what hatred will cause. When you hate an individual, you never can tell. That individual may be the one that the Lord had destined to take over from you. And so when you do that, you'll just be fighting a lost battle, just like King Saul. Then, aside from that, like I told us, seeking self-appraisal from as 3, and the violation of God's provision. First Samuel chapter 15, verse 7 through verse 8. Violation. He violated God's provision. Leaders have violated God's provision. Today they believe everything is all about them. Everything must be about them. And then in the process of this, in addition to being selfish, Saul also justified himself for every mistake he made. Justification for every error. So many leaders today, instead of admitting their errors and folly, they will continue to justify their error. Instead of them to go before the Lord, they will continue to justify that what they did is right. You remember in the offering of burnt offering without Samuel, it went ahead. See, when you are rejected, the sign of rejection of a leadership is error. You begin to plunge into further mistakes and error. In the process, he made a lot of making offering, burnt offering. That was sole responsibility of prophet Samuel. He drifted away from his over boundary, his jurisdiction. He overstepped his jurisdiction. When you lose focus of your leadership and the reason why the Lord put you in position, you begin to overstep your boundaries. You overstep boundaries, and then not only that, and then also justifying other, justifying your errors. He became so proud, as recorded in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 12. He then disobedient, 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 1 through 13. He became so greedy, So many major problems and challenges of leadership position in Africa and at world at large is greediness. A lot of leaders are satisfied. They are never satisfied. That's why you discover that some certain individual, they could find, all kind of things in their houses, not just because they are greedy. Everything must be all about them. So, leadership alone. Leadership, the essence of leadership is to ensure the prosperity and the posterity of the people we are leading, not about us. Not about us. So then, aside from the fact that, aside from this, another thing is that he saw everyone as a threat, including those that should be of blessing to him. See, the major challenges of leadership position is that if you are not careful, you may likely end up like Saul, who will begin to see every individual potential of life and ministry. You begin to chase them away. So many generals chase their assistants, people that would have been of significant help and assistance to them. They've chased them away because of their greediness, insecurity. They've chased them away. People that ought to have been a blessing to them. In some churches, some leaders have equally chased people actually supposed to be a blessing to them. They chase them away. Then what are the consequences of this? Is action. He was rejected as a king. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 26. It was rejected by God. My friend, if you don't want to be rejected, see, a lot of individuals have been rejected. Like the case of King Saul, he was rejected as a king. What were the further consequences of his rejection? The Spirit of the Lord departed from him. The Spirit of the Lord departed from him. Can I just share this with you? There was a time I was in a place one day, and there was some ceiling fan, and the Lord, while the minister was ministering, and the Lord said I should look up to the ceiling. I heard you at the point. I said, why should you ask me to be looking at the ceiling where the message is going on? He said, just focus. I said, no, why do I have to be looking at the ceiling? He said, my friend, look up. By the time I now just lifted my eyes to look at the ceiling, they took off the light, and then within a period, and I began to look at the ceiling fan, and I discovered that they were stopping at different time. They were stopping at different time. But there was this particular tool. This particular tool kept working until when they put on the alternative source of electricity. Until they put on the gen, the tool was still working. So I was shocked. I said, what happened? I said, what kind of engine? So you know what I said? He said, the same thing. He said, that is what I want to show you. He said, see, some individuals are in leadership position today, pissed off. Despite the fact that the current abuse, he said they are still working. He said they master the act of ministry, probably through their homiletics and everything. They master it. So when you see them, you think I'm still behind them. Say, I've long left them. I've long left them. And that because they master all the act, and people still see them acting, they think I'm still the one using them. So meanwhile, I've departed from them, just like King Saul. And I ask you this morning as a leader, as the Lord departed from you, are you the one solely in charge of yourself? Have you lost focus of the reason why the Lord brought you into leadership? Can I just tell you lastly, what happened eventually? Aside from being rejected by God, as recorded in that 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 26, the second point, like I said, there was that the Spirit of the Lord left him, and the evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. Are you not being tormented today? All those insecurity in you, all those misbehaviors. Don't you see some leaders, the way they behave? They put them in leadership position. They turn everything upside down. The people they send them to go and govern, they scatter the place. As if their leadership position is about scattering and gathering. If Jesus was to have scattered people, I'm sure you wouldn't have a place to administer your leadership position on. The master never scattered people. Rather, he gathered people with the spirit of understanding. It's not that those didn't have their weaknesses. It's not that because they didn't have their challenges. They had all their challenges. They have their attitude. But the master perfectly understood them, showing us an example. And lastly, on the consequences of the error of King Saul leadership, Saul and his children, Jonah, Machishal, Abinadab, they were all killed at Mount Gilboa. His children, his 3 sons, were all killed in one day. Not only his sons alone, himself also. They all died in one day. Have you not heard stories of leaders dying in leadership position? Have you not seen people who aspire to be kingmaker of their own organization dying anyhow? There are records of such. And I believe the reason why the Lord often brings this to us is for us to learn. But one thing I've discovered in leadership is that people will never learn. That's why the Lord sent me to you, wherever you are, listening, watching. I want you to learn. Don't die. Don't kill your children. Look at some individual. Look at the life of their children. Because of their mismanagement of the people of God, their children today are paying the price. Have you not seen organizations? Have you not seen ministries that at a point in time they have leaders, and the children of those leaders are no longer attending those ministries again? Have you not seen that? Have you not seen some leaders being taken away untimely? Have you not seen some leaders dying in their prime? Are you not afraid? Are you not scared to change, amend your ways as a leader? Beloved, if King Saul could be rejected by God, And the same God that appointed him could also met out severe judgment on him. Beloved, if God could not spare King Saul, do you think the Lord will spare you the way you are leading the people as a politician? Are you not afraid of the life of what becomes of your children and your generation as a result of the consequences that will later come on you? Have you not had in history of people that were once in political position and today they are trekking all around, where they once drive, cruise around with vehicles, with convoys? Today they are now trekking. Have you not seen leaders selling their property, their assets, because they have nothing left again? Have you not seen leaders today stricken with all kind of sicknesses and diseases as consequences of the leadership error and failure? Have you not seen church leaders? Have you not seen the way God deal with people? Beloved, see, God is no respecter of person. He's no respecter of person. The same God that raised Moses up, the same God that dealt with Moses. Sometimes people tell us that God is loving. It's good, God is loving, but it's also God. Are you not afraid of your life? If you're not afraid of your life, are you not afraid of the life of your children, your generation, your family? They are family members because of their errors, leadership failures. Please, beloved, I come to you today to charge you. And I want to plead with you. If you, as a leader out there, you cage people, you put people in ministerial cooler, you hated your David, and all you want to do is to kill, terminate, and ensure that they are thrown out of life and ministry and out of political corridors. Beloved, bear in mind, the same God that gave you the platform can also withdraw that platform from you, and could also withdraw that platform from your generation. You of one of his generation, the Lord withdrew, the Lord divided the leadership. It was torn. I want to plead with you, and I want to beg you, listeners out there, don't wait until the Lord judgment comes. Don't wait. You cannot just afford, you can't stand the judgment of God. You can't stand it. No one faces it. It will not only end on you. You know what the Lord says? Even to the third generation. Will you destroy your generations all because of leadership position? Will you destroy your generation because of your ambition? Can I just ask you, are you still the same person you were several years when the Lord called you? Book of Revelation. He said, remember how thou hast fallen, not in the cloud, in the noise, in the thunder and lightning. The Lord is not. Can I just ask you, is the Lord, when last have you heard from the Lord? When last have you heard from him? Is the Lord still communicating with you? When last have you had a revelation? When last have you received that angelic ministration? When last have you heard from the Holy Ghost? If all this has ceased in your life, beloved, you need to go back. You need to go back to your better before it becomes too late. You remember Saul, Prophet Samuel, he pleaded with God on behalf of King Saul, but the Lord said, no, he's a forgotten mad case. I've long rejected him. May the Lord not reject you. What would be the essence of your leadership position if after all your years on earth, you now end up as an enemy of God? You are treated by God the way he treated King Saul, without leaving somebody to continue to take over the ministry, to continue from where he will stop. There are so many leaders today. They were once leader, but their children no longer in those ministry because their family are long rejected by God. They are no longer go around. You will see some ministries. Their children of their general overseers are no longer attending those ministries. When the family is rejected by God, the Lord will turn his back against those children. Will you now wait for God to chase your children away from the ministry you won't govern as a leader? Will that not be a shame and a disgrace to your very person and to your leadership tenure? How will it look like? You not having a son to take over, to continue from where you stop. That after you are long gone, nobody from your generation remaining in your ministry. After you are long gone, nobody continue from that where you stop. In politics as well, we know of some family, I wouldn't want to mention name, that because of what their forefathers did when the Lord brought them into leadership position, the Lord rejected their generation. Today, they are byword, never to smell the corridor of leadership. I want to plead with you. May you not pull down the grace of God upon your generation. May you not bring the wrath of God upon your life in the name of Jesus. Beloved, see, when next I come your way, keep fit, remain blessed, but bear in mind, every leadership position is opportunity to show your strengths and your weaknesses. You will have the sole responsibility to work on your weaknesses. That's why there are biblical examples of leaders that once reigned and no more. That's why there are records of leaders for you to learn from. And if you are politically